Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into the ideas from the book Reinventing Your Life. We're going to talk about those self-defeating patterns that so many of us get stuck in, and more importantly, how we can even begin to break free.
So to kick things off, I want to throw a few questions your way. And as I do, just, honestly, ask yourself if any of these sound a little too familiar. Think about this for a second. Is there a pattern where you're always drawn to partners who are, emotionally unavailable? It's that awful feeling of being left out in the cold, again and again, no matter what you do.
Or what about this one? Do you carry around this deep, secret feeling that there's something fundamentally wrong with you? You know, that little voice that whispers, if they ever saw the real me, they'd run. And maybe this is you. You can achieve all the success in the world, get the promotion, the perfect apartment, whatever, but on the inside, you still feel like a fraud, like none of it really counts and you don't deserve it.
Okay, so if any of those questions really hit home, the book suggests you might be dealing with something called a life trap. And this is the key idea we need to unpack to really see what's going on underneath the surface.
So what is a life trap exactly? Well, it's way more than just a bad habit. Think of it more like an emotional blueprint that got stamped on you when you were a kid. And the really tough part? Without even realizing it, we spend our adult lives recreating the most painful dynamics from our childhood.
And what makes these traps so incredibly powerful comes down to three things. 1, they're not temporary, they are lifelong themes. 2, they're always self-destructive in some way. And 3, and this is a big one, they fight to survive. They actively resist being changed because, on some deep level, they feel like who we are. And here's the real kicker, the big irony of it all. Why on earth would we keep walking into situations that hurt us? The answer is because it's familiar. The trap feels like home. And even if that home was painful, it's the reality our brain knows. And we are wired to cling to what feels predictable.
All right. Theory is one thing, but let's make this real. Let's look at a few stories from the book's case studies. These really show just how powerfully these traps can run someone's life, often completely behind the scenes.
First, take Patrick. He grew up with an alcoholic mom who was totally unpredictable. She'd just disappear for days. Now, fast forward to his adult life, and he's married to a woman who is constantly unfaithful. That chaos, that threat of her leaving, it feels intensely familiar. It activates all his old fears, and his brain mistakes that anxiety for passionate chemistry. Now, here's a totally different flavor of life trap. Heather's parents were Holocaust survivors, and because of their trauma, they were extremely overprotective. They taught her that the world is a terrifyingly dangerous place. As a result, she now lives with a constant, crippling anxiety that something awful is about to happen. Her world has become incredibly small because of this fear. And then we have Jed. Jed's mother was very cold, very unaffectionate. He literally grew up without feeling that basic warmth and care. So now, he bounces from one relationship to another, and the second a woman starts to show him real affection, he gets turned off. For Jed, true intimacy feels so foreign, so uncomfortable, that he finds reasons to run away. These stories are just so telling, right? And what's important to know is that Patrick, Heather, and Jed, they're not just isolated cases. They represent some of the most common life traps the authors identified over years of work. In fact, the book maps out 11 distinct life traps. And just being able to put a name to these struggles is huge. It helps us see them not as our own personal random flaws, but as recognizable, understandable patterns. And we can't get into all 11 right now, but just look at the range here. You've got the abandonment trap, which we saw with Patrick. There's the defectiveness trap, that feeling of being unlovable at your core. Then there's subjugation, where you're always putting everyone else's needs before your own. Or unrelenting standards, that perfectionist trap where you feel like you're never, ever good enough. The first step really is just seeing which one of these rings true for you. So where did these things even come from? If they're so powerful and start so young, how do they get so deeply wired into who we are? Well, the book lays out a pretty clear recipe for how they're formed. It really boils down to 3 ingredients. First, your inborn temperament. Are you naturally a more sensitive kid or more easygoing? Second, you've got your childhood environment. The life trap is born in the collision between those 2 things. When the world you grew up in simply failed to give you something you deeply and fundamentally needed. And these are the core needs the book is talking about. Every single child needs to feel safe. They need to feel connected to people like they belong. They need autonomy, the freedom to become their own person. They need self-esteem to feel valued. They need to be able to express themselves, their feelings, their needs. And they need realistic limits. A life trap is basically the story our mind creates to make sense of what happened when one of these needs went unmet.
And this really brings us to the most powerful idea in the entire book. You can't fight an enemy you can't see. The whole journey of changing these patterns starts with this one thing: awareness. Just identifying your life trap, giving it a name. That's what starts to take away its power. It's the moment you shift from being a victim of the pattern to an observer of it. Understanding these life traps, it's like finally being given a map to your own inner world. It gives you a language for your oldest struggles. And with that understanding for the first time comes a real chance to change. So the question to leave you with isn't just if you have a pattern, but which one are you ready to finally face?